Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all on behalf of Rainbow Children Heart Institute. Today, we have joined you to have a knowledge enriching session with two of our eminent consultants, Dr. Koneti Nageshwar Rao sir, our pediatric cardiologist, and Dr. Tapan Kumar Das, our pediatric cardiac surgeon. So first, Dr. Nageshwar Rao sir will be taking a topic on diagnosis and management of heart disease in children, a case-based approach. And Dr. Tapan Kumar Das sir will be taking a study on right time for pediatric cardiac surgery post-diagnosis. I'll request Dr. Nageshwar Rao sir to please take the session ahead.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Good evening, everyone. We are sorry for the delay of 6 minutes. I know that you are all waiting. So today we'll have some case-based discussions, how it is influencing the diagnosis and management of various heart diseases in routine life during our practice. So just let us look at this a postnatal transition. We all know that postnatal transition, that there are three important structures. One is the ductus venosus, second is foramina ovale, the third is ductus arteriosus. So as soon as baby is born, there will be increased negative thoracic pressure, baby takes breathing, then PO2 will be increased, there will be constriction of the ductus arteriosus from the pulmonary end. So once the blood flow to the increases to the lung, so the left atrial filling pressures will be increased. Foramina ovale will be closed because of the left atrial pressures are more than the right atrial pressure. The ductus arteriosus also will be closed because of the fall in pulmonary vascular resistance and also smooth muscle constriction. Whereas the ductus venosus will be closed somewhat little bit later compared to the ductus arteriosus and foramina ovale. So there will be acute rise in SVR. This leads to the left ventricle should undergo severe stress. There will be abrupt ventricular arterial decoupling. That means the right ventricle was facing to pulmonary artery ductus arteriosus and decompressing into descending aorta, which is attached to the low pressure placenta. Now abruptly the ductus arteriosus is closed. The right ventricle should forcefully pump into the pulmonary arteries. Imagine a scenario if the pulmonary vascular resistance that doesn't fall, or there is an obstruction to the RVOT, so you will have a stress in the right ventricle. Right ventricle faces acute stress, so baby will go into right heart failure. Typically you see in case of PPHN, HMD, meconium aspiration, whatever the context where PVR doesn't fall, right ventricle will go into acute stress. Whereas left ventricle was pumping into ascending aorta and then to the carotids, subclavian vessels, and also partly into descending aorta. Now because the foramina ovale is closed, the right atrium cannot shunt to the left atrium. Whatever the pulmonary venous return which is coming to the left atrium will be pumped into aorta. If you have obstruction to the aortic wall or interruption of aortic arch, or there is a coarctation, the left ventricle will go into acute stress. So this physiology will make you to present so many neonatal heart diseases in routine life you see in your NICU. Typically, obstructive total anomalous pulmonary venous return, or HLHS, or interrupted aortic arch, they present very early in life because of the systemic obstruction. Whereas conditions like pulmonary atresia or critical pulmonary stenosis present somewhat little bit later, where ductus arteriosus closes after 2 to 3 days of postnatal period. Once the PVR starts dropping, by the end of third week or fourth week, the PVR pulmonary vascular resistance reaches to near normal stage. So the cases which has got dependent on the pulmonary vascular resistance, like a large VST, atrioventricular septal defect, or some of the conditions like all kappa, they present at this particular time. In summary, in neonatal period, you have 4 types of presentations. One is shock presentation, second is cyanosis presentation, third heart failure presentation, and sometimes you will see asymptomatic babies. So in shock presentation, like hypoplastic left heart syndrome, obstructive TAPVR, coarctation, critical AS, all these are common phenomena is a left ventricular outflow tract obstruction leading to acute left ventricular dysfunction. So cardiac output will not be maintained. They present like a shock. You have a strong differential diagnosis of sepsis in these cases. Whereas cases with transposition or pulmonary atresia, the obvious finding is they will have severe cyanosis. So you can't miss these cases because obvious cyanosis, and X-ray will give you subtle clues in the form of reduced vascularity or a peculiar specific features like a egg on side appearance in case of TGA. Whereas certain heart diseases like TAPVR, vena of Galen, or AV valve regurgitations, they present with acute congestive heart failure with a big heart. You will be able to appreciate cardiomegaly. Baby will have respiratory distress. So these are sometimes you will have high volume pulse in the case of systemic AV fistulas. You have to take all the subtle clues and then you should diagnose the underlying condition. Several times you will see asymptomatic during neonatal period and come back to the physician with respiratory distress. Then you will tell that there is a congenital heart disease. They will first blame the neonatologist why that doctor did not pick up the findings rather than seeking for the treatment. These are common phenomena we see in your regular life. How to recognize heart disease in neonates? There is no history. Clinical findings are not obvious. Unreliable auscultation due to lung pathology or ventilation, so many things. Variable presentations due to different natural histories. First presentation may be the last in case of aortic arch interruption or duct dependent pulmonary circulation. So you need to take the very subtle clues in this. Let us look at some of the critical examples. Physical examination will have tachycardia or bradycardia. Blood pressure may be high or low. Baby will have hypothermia, weak pulse, inspiratory stridor, asymmetrical movement of the chest, unlabored breathing, and grunting. This is a classical example of a grunting. What is grunting? You can see end expiratory retractions. The baby adopts to a physiological means of a PEEP, that is a positive end expiratory pressure. When they have alveolar exudates, alveolar edema in a baby where you are doing ventilation, you adjust the PEEP. The same physiological principle is adopted by a neonate when they have that kind of a physiology. Alveoli filled with exudates, or it may be respiratory or cardiac. Whenever there is a cardiac dysfunction, especially like a coarctation, interruption, severe LV dysfunction, there will be pulmonary edema. The baby adapts to this kind of a grunting, and you see them. When you see this kind of thing, you please rule out a systemic outflow tract obstructions. And it's important to palpate the femoral arteries and also brachials to see the low volume pulse is there or not. Reliability on dorsalis and radial is somewhat critical. It's a very difficult to appreciate. Pre-discharge saturation, pre-discharge palpation of the femoral pulse is mandatory in all neonates from the nurseries. If necessary, you please check the preductal postductal saturation. We educated a lot of people in our surrounding area to check the pulse oximeter plethysmography. If you check like this, you have a steep up slope and down slope. This is a normal plethysmography, indicates that good volume pulse. When you have a plethysmography which has got a delayed descending limb, here you can see, and overall blunted signal that suggests that this baby is having a coarctation of aorta or systemic outflow tract obstruction, or it may be shock due to sepsis. So these information you should be in a position to gather. Let us look at some of the examples here. This is a 12 hours baby presented with poor perfusion, low saturation. The fetal echo was normal, and you can see the preductal saturation 76, postductal saturation 80. I'm just trying to open the chart box. If you are putting in chart box, I'll be very happy to see that. So at this point of time, there are no questions here. So what is your differential diagnosis here? What do you think about this X-ray when a neonate is coming to you with this kind of saturation, with this kind of physiology and ABG showing? Any clues? I'll wait for 10 seconds. If you don't answer, I am going to explain that. So you can look at the PO2 levels. It's lesser than 60 and auscultation unreliable. So this X-ray, a neonatologist or nursery, you will see that cardiac shadow is not greatly appreciable. It is not distinctly seen. You have air bronchogram which is seen left side. You can see in spite that there is a heart, you can see the air bronchogram suggestive of that alveolar is filled with exudates. Here bilateral symmetrical reticular pattern is there, mottled appearance, reticular pattern, symmetrical. So you have set of differential diagnosis like a delayed presentation of a HMD or group B streptococcal infection, or if it's a 12 hours baby, so unlikely this group B streptococcal or delayed HMD. So it should be some pulmonary edema, a chronic pulmonary edema, intrauterine pulmonary edema. What are the conditions you get intrauterine pulmonary edema? Critically obstructed total anomalous pulmonary venous return. So this baby had a stormy course in the few hours. The NICU people, they put HFNC initially, did not work out. Then they have to ventilate with oscillator ventilator, and then child started developing pansystolic murmur, and echo was done, a functional echo. All the nurseries, they should know some echocardiographic skills you should develop. If you want, I can share you a book called Echocardiography for the Neonatologist, Jonathan Skinner. I have a soft copy, we can share you. Dilated right atrium, right ventricle, small AST with the right to left shunt, moderate TR, and right ventricular dysfunction. So it suggests that there is a severe pulmonary hypertension, duct is right to left shunt. Don't rely on only right ventricular systolic pressure. Here you have right to left shunt across AST, right to left shunt across the ductus arteriosus, suggests that there is a severe pulmonary arterial hypertension. So look at the echocardiogram, what the cardiologist did. You have right heart is dilated, left atrium here, descending aorta here. The distance between the left atrium to the descending aorta is somewhat higher, and there are no pulmonary veins which are draining to the left atrium. Rather, all the pulmonary veins are draining into a common pulmonary vein which is coming into liver and opening into portal vein with an obstruction. So this is nothing but total anomalous pulmonary venous return. What will happen in infradiaphragmatic TAPV are all the pulmonary veins form the common pulmonary vein which drains descending vein and then goes below the diaphragm here and opens into hepatic radicals or portal vein. So you have admixture in the atrium here, and your right atrial blood saturation equal to left atrial and right ventricle, left ventricle, pulmonary artery and aorta. So if you have umbilical vein catheter, you check the saturation, it will be high because of the ductus venosus sampling is there in the IVC. And if you have ductus arterial postductal saturation, you can check it, there will be desaturation. So what we do is our surgical team, they immediately take these kind of cases and we work as a team and we discuss and we do the operation. So we have actually conducted several of these cases, antenatally diagnosed and postnatally. Immediately within 1 hour we operated. Let us look at a couple of examples. A day 3 term neonate weighs 2.7 kilograms, referred from a remote village of Guntur district in Andhra Pradesh with echocardiogram of dilated RA, moderate TR and RVSP is high, and baby was intubated initially and subsequently improved. So this is the scenario, and baby shifted in a stable condition and septic markers positive. So look at the X-ray. What is important here? Can any one of you can able to discuss? This X-ray showed normal cardiothoracic ratio, but look at the lungs. Lungs are dark, no vascularity, absolutely. This is called as oligemia. When you have vascularity which is not seen in the middle 1/3, we call it as oligemia. So we took ECG. I asked them to take ECG in the beginning before transfer. You can give this ECG to any of the adult cardiologists without telling the age, they will tell essentially normal. A adult form of pattern of ECG in a neonate is 100% abnormal. Here, if you look at this, the QRS axis, there is a positive in AVF, positive in L1, suggestive of it's a left axis deviation more than, it is plus 60 or plus 45, which is quite abnormal. It may be normal in adult. There are no R waves here, deep S waves in V1 and tall R waves in V5, V6 is subject to that. It's a left heart dominance is there. So that means there is a right heart is hyperplastic. So let us look at the echocardiogram. Here the clues are the RVSP, that is right ventricular systolic pressure is high, low saturation, ECG adult form, and X-ray is showing oligemia. So we did the echocardiogram. Echocardiogram showed that hypoplastic right heart syndrome, pulmonary atresia, the pulmonary valve is totally atretic here, which is there's no blood going from the right ventricle into pulmonary artery. The only source was a constricted small ductus arteriosus. So if you give oxygen to this baby, the ductus arteriosus will further close, they die suddenly. So unless until you confirm that, you should not give oxygen in these conditions. So what we do here, we give prostaglandin and we try to open the pulmonary valve. You can see here, this is the pulmonary artery valve is totally fused. We perforated the pulmonary valve using a wire called CTO wire, and we actually snare that wire out into the femoral artery, exteriorize that one, and we see, you can see that balloon being inflated here, inflated, and we are dilating that. So pulmonary wall is being dilated serially with various balloons, and final result is, you will see end result. After that we can open the complete RVOT. So to begin with, like this, and now at the end you open that. This is only possible if we work as a team. See, it is not credit by one person. It is the whole team which is working and getting the baby better. We get a lot of patients from Nanded, and one of my friend, Dr. Deepak, is a pediatric cardiologist. He also actually sends us a lot of these patients. We work as a team in our department. So presentation of cyanotic congenital heart disease, cyanosis, no respiratory distress in the beginning, simple TGA or pulmonary atresia with adequate pulmonary blood flow. If there is a respiratory distress, closing a ductus arteriosus, associated AV valve regurgitation, abstinence anomaly, you should think. If there is a ventricular dysfunction, aortic arch interruption, we should think. So whenever you have this kind of scenario, you can see oligemia, divide lung fields into three: lateral 1/3, middle 1/3, medial 1/3. If there are no vascularity here, suggestive of pulmonary atresia over there. So when you take ECG and X-ray, if there are right ventricular forces, right axis deviation, it suggests VST pulmonary atresia. If there is a left axis deviation, left ventricular forces, suggestive of that pulmonary atresia, intact septum, tricuspid atresia. Let us look at another case example here. This is second week late preterm, presented with a shock after discharge, perinatal unit, history of a previous sibling death present, fetal echo was normal except mild right heart dilation, and now baby came with closing ductus. So poor perfusion, mottled appearance, the capillary refilling time is increased, grunting respiration, gallop present, hepatomegaly. All these features suggestive of either shock due to sepsis or shock due to systemic obstruction. Here clues are gallop present and hepatomegaly are important clues. pH is very low, you can see that, but PO2 is reasonably good. So X-ray is this big, you can see the cardiomegaly here. There is some amount of increased vascularity and also cephalization. You can see ill-defined vascularity, which is there's no definition of these vessels, and also minor fissure thickening, suggestive of it is a pulmonary edema. So when you do here, you can see that plethysmography, upper limb and lower limb. The upper limb, there is a good waveform here. Lower limb, you can see the waveform which is blunted and delayed descending limb, what I discussed with you in the previous animation. So that suggests that this baby is having definitely coarctation of aorta. So we do echocardiogram, and you can see that the left heart is dilated and there is quite a significant obstruction here, suggestive of there is a severe coarctation of aorta. Once you diagnose coarctation of aorta, the treatment is very simple. To be honest with you, we start prostaglandin somewhat higher dose compared to the ductal dependent pulmonary circulation, where we start 20 nanograms. Here we need little bit higher dose because you have PO2 levels are higher. So that is the gradient. So started prostaglandin. Now you see the plethysmography, the lower limb plethysmography increased better. That gives idea that your ductus arteriosus is really opened up very high. So any baby presenting with this hypotension, cardiomegaly, hypoperfusion, delayed cardiac capillary filling time, mottled appearance, please suspect coarctation of aorta, especially when symptoms are present during closure of the ductus, refractory shock to the volume, and weak pulse, thready pulse, disparity of plethysmography will give important information. Let us look at another interesting case example. So can you identify the voice? Anybody would like to comment on the voice? I don't know whether my slides are seen. Am I talking monotonously? Can anybody give at least one chart message that I am okay? So I don't know. Am I okay? Can you hear me? So anyway, I am not getting any response from any individuals. So I'm going to just discuss this. This is inspiratory strider. You can see the voice very clearly. So we have one of my colleague called Dr. Shweta. She has a very special interest on the antenatal diagnosis of vascular rings. She has a huge collection of vascular rings of double aortic arch, right arch, circumflex aorta, all these things. So this baby, based on this strider itself, we could make out the possible diagnosis of vascular rings. What will happen in case of vascular ring? If the aortic arch is double aortic arch, here there will be one-way entry, but during expiration there will be obstruction in the case of lower respiratory obstruction, whereas upper respiratory obstruction during inspiration itself there will be obstruction. So this patient underwent, you can see here, CT angio. This is the ET tube and nasogastric tube, which has got obstruction completely due to double aortic arch. You can see here the aortic arch is double here. Double aortic arch, very classically seen. Both trachea and bronchus is compressed by mechanical compressed, external compressed by aorta. My surgeon Dr. Tapan Das has got vast experience in the vascular ring surgeries. That vast experience, because of our diagnosis pick up by the neonatologist in and around the city, we could make it very appropriate time. So in vascular rings like a double aortic arch and circumflex aorta, right aortic arch, or pulmonary sling, whatever it is, the symptomatology is going to be same. The treatment modalities will differ, whether midline sternotomy or right sternotomy, based on the case to case. Let us look at some more examples. I request the chairperson to stop anytime, because I have 15 cases, but I can stop anytime. Whenever you feel bored or whenever time is exceeding, I am happy to stop it. This is the 20 days old full term non-consanguineous marriage, presented with 4 episodes of generalized seizure activity and a history of sibling death. They actually sent this baby for cardiac evaluation for the echocardiogram. We did not do echo, we did ECG. What is the obvious finding of ECG? Previous sibling death. If you see this ECG, you can see rhythm strip here. This is the QRS, this is another QRS. So in between RR interval, you should have Q to T lesser than 50% of the RR interval. Here Q to T more than 50%, that suggests that it is a long QTC syndrome. So to calculate long QTC syndrome, you have Bejet's formula. You all know that QTC equal square root of QT by square root of RR interval. If there is any increase more than 460, we treat them very aggressively. First, we will avoid the medications which further increases QTC, and we probably give propanol in these cases. Based on the scenario, we will treat the babies. So a neonate day 3 referred to NICU for the management of hyperbilirubinemia. There are seizures, baby developed respiratory distress and a high heart rate. What is your diagnosis here? Very quick. So this is a narrow QRS tachycardia, very high heart rate. You can see close to 300 here. When I have this kind of ECG 300, you need not be panic immediately unless baby is a shock, baby is having a urine output is less motile, then you have to do cardioversion. Otherwise, you can give adenosine. So when you give adenosine, here you can see what happened. You can see development of flutter waves. This is all called as sawtooth appearance. This is one R wave. This is another RR interval. Sorry, there's a bradycardia and the atrial flutter is there. So any case comes to you, adenosine is not only a treatment modality, and also it works like a diagnostic investigation. When you are giving adenosine, please take ECG or please take a rhythm strip, or at least you record in your mobile phone the monitor ECG, which will give a lot of information. This baby we treated with Inderal digoxin and later on we gave elective DC shock, and baby improved very well. So this is a 12 years old girl presented with awareness of heartbeat, palpable cardiac pulsations, normal heart sounds, so no murmur, absolutely normal ECG. Can you see the X-ray? The X-ray is interesting, right? So it's an asymptomatic baby relatively, except some awareness of heartbeat. There's a projection, there's a bulging in the lateral left mediastinum, cardiac border here. What is that? So we did echocardiogram. You can see the echocardiogram, some of the views showing some important structure here. You can see like a cyst here, here also like a cyst here. You can see that. So again, you can see another. This is the right ventricle, this is the left ventricle. There's a absolutely a very big cystic structure here. You can see that cystic structure. We have differential diagnosis of either double chambered right ventricle, congenital diverticulum, pseudo aneurysm, acquired cyst, all these things. When you have MRI, this is the right ventricle, this is the left ventricle, there's a big mass seen here. What is that? So we have a diagnosis of cardiac hydatid cyst. We published this. You can see that this is the cardiac hydatid cyst here. You can see when we open the heart, you can see that. So we can't exercise just like that. You have to treat the patient after diagnosis with albendazole, at least 2 weeks of treatment. After that, we have to give hypertonic saline, inject into the cyst, and then aspirate as much as possible. Otherwise, the material which is coming out of the hydatid cyst is highly toxic, and they sometimes develop anaphylactic reaction. So you can see that this is the cyst we actually enucleated from the heart and then removed it. This is an extremely rare scenario. Since it's an exciting case, I shared with you. You all know, and we all read during our microbiology period time, how the echinococcus will develop. And there are two intermediate, there are two hosts. One is goat, second is the dog, which you get infection from them, and you can have echinococcosis and cysticercosis. All these are possible. Management, I told you. So this is a very simple case. How now we have so many cases of like this. So with a high grade fever, rashes, one episode of vomiting, we have differential diagnosis of a dengue fever, but there was a macular papular rash, redness all over the body, neck, palm, soles, and lips. So it suggests classical Kawasaki disease. You can see this is very classical Kawasaki disease. Why I put this one? Nowadays you are seeing in the COVID era, if there is a family history of COVID, or child develops a COVID, or if you check the antibodies to COVID in one of these children, you will have strong positivity for the IgG of COVID, and this is like nothing but a Kawasaki or Kawasaki like illness. You tend to do all blood investigations, which includes a platelet, CRP, ESR, interleukin 6, D dimer, and you have all elevations like this. Here you can see platelets are 9 lakhs and CRP is very high and ESR is very high. We tend to give gamma globulin, and sometimes we may have to give infliximab nowadays because a Kawasaki like illness with a giant coronary aneurysms, you better to give, these are coronary arteries which are dilated but not giant in this particular case scenario. One of my colleague, again Dr. Shweta, has got huge cohort of patients post COVID with a giant coronary aneurysms. So we give gamma globulin and aspirin, and we treat these conditions very similarly like Kawasaki disease. This is a 4-year-old boy, fever, cough, 10 days, abdominal pain, pedal edema, left upper limb weakness, and cardiovascular system showed there is a gallop. Now you can see that ventricular dysfunction, and importantly, you can see there is a thrombus here. There is a thrombus here. Any condition which they develop acute ventricular dysfunction, like a scorpion sting, especially, they will have acute rise in SVR that leads to ventricular arterial decoupling. then they develop acute stress to the left ventricular dysfunction. Here you can see a myocarditis, acute myocarditis leading to the acute ventricular dysfunction, developing the thrombus and ventricular dysfunction. So we have to give inotropes, anticoagulants, diuretics, and supportive treatment. So believe me, close to 60 to 70% of the patients with acute myocarditis, they improve. Why I am telling this example? Earlier we used to tell that it's a rule of 33%. That means 33% will improve, 33% will die, 33% will develop dilated cardiomyopathy. But with the present treatment modality, close to 70% improve very well with this. So we treat these conditions very effectively, meticulously. We give all sort of treatments. Another 4 months baby with gallop and cardiomegaly. You can see cardiomegaly here, but vascularity is normal. Very interesting. You can see left ventricular dilation, left atrial dilation and present. Important thing, these are cases from Maharashtra. This patient came from actually Karnataka. I'm sorry, not from Maharashtra, Karnataka. Now you can see there are QVs in L1 and AVL here, and also there is increased voltages and V5, V6 QVs are seen. So that suggests that there is lateral wall infarction. Why an infant will get lateral wall infarction? Now we do echocardiogram. You can see severe left ventricular dysfunction, hyperechogenic papillary muscle, and you can carefully see this is the pulmonary artery, this is aorta. The coronary artery is arising from the pulmonary artery called as Alcapa. This condition is very important to diagnose. Right now we have one Alcapa in our ICU, got operated by Dr. Tapan Das, my surgeon. So they improve very well if you diagnose this. This is a treatable condition, absolutely. Take home messages: LV dysfunction in an infant, you always should rule out Alcapa by at least taking ECG in the periphery. When you have grown up children with this kind of pulmonary edema, you can see here pulmonary edema. First to treat the acute pulmonary edema, there is a gallop, and this baby referred as myocarditis. Actually, in reality, because of LV dysfunction, BP was low. We gave, you can see that there is LV dysfunction, and we have to give inotropic support and treated with Lasix, dobutamine, and milrinone. Next day, we checked BP was very high. BP significantly went up 130/80. What is the reason? Then we actually checked that there is aorta arteritis, renal artery stenosis. This is another case example, not belong to this particular child, but renal artery stenosis was there. We actually dilated this and stented that. So identification of these kind of problems is very critical. You will be able to do only when you meticulously do the evaluation. So left ventricular function improved very well and child did extremely well. So any disproportionate response to the BP should be assessed, evaluating clinical picture, avoid starting AC inhibitors in the acute setting unless you are very clear about creatinine and other areas. I may stop with one case, but let us see one or two. 27 months baby with high volume pulse, continuous murmur, right lower sternal border. This case came from Maharashtra. ECG is absolutely normal. And we did echocardiogram and CT angiogram. You can see large cyst here. The coronary arteries are supplying that. Actually, we did the angiocardiogram. You can see very weird anatomy. So the left coronary artery is merging with the right coronary artery. Right coronary artery is not seen properly, and there is a saccular formation is there. This is called as an unusual coronary AV fistula. And then what we have done is we closed the fistula and fistula stack with the two devices here. So now you can see the fistula's aneurysmal tract is completely occluded by the device, and there is appearance of the all the coronary vessels which are actually collateralized. So this is very interesting case to deal with. That's why I thought only subtle finding was a continuous murmur. Based on that, the patient had to come to us. Maybe with this case I will stop. This is a 25 days neonate mechanoaspiration syndrome, big heart here, failed extubation 3 times. There was a moderate ventricular septal defect. So this baby was not fit for surgery, and also we don't do surgical closure during neonatal period. A VST usually will be closed after 3 months of age. You can manage with the medication till that time. So this particular baby, there was a failed extubation several times, though we have to take and put a device here. You can see a button being deployed there. This is called as a Konar multifunctional device. This is actually uh, developed by me along with a group called LifeTech company. So we closed the VST here. You can see the device, Konar multifunctional device, and X-ray cardiomegaly improved, and child got discharged after 1 week. Maybe last case, I'm sorry, I'm telling every time last case. This child came from remote village, severe cyanosis, X-ray showed some opacity, echo showed there is a fistula here, and you can see it is a pulmonary artery to the left atrial fistula, and we have to close with a device here. After doing a transseptal puncture, you can see the device, the fistulous communication improved very well. So I will just skip off these slides and go to last slide here. Heart disease in children are quite challenging. For me, it's interesting and passionate. Meticulous evaluation, including history and other available investigation data, will provide you proper diagnosis. Appropriate treatment is based on the individual case. Thank you very much. If I exit my time, I'm really sorry for that. I was little bit encouraged to talk all these things. Thank you very much. I will stop sharing. Please go to Dr. Tapan's presentation.
So good evening, everybody. And I'm Dr. Tapan Das. I'm going to talk about the timing of congenital heart surgery. Because of the delay and late, I'll just talk about only few diseases. So the classification of the congenital heart disease, all of you know that acyanotic and cyanotic heart disease, which is the older version of the classification. But recently, what classification we are using is increased pulmonary blood flow and decreased pulmonary blood flow. In between that, there is obstructed pulmonary blood flow and mixed blood flow. So going to the acyanotic congenital heart disease, I'll talk about atrial septal defect, ventricular septal defect, patent ductus arteriosus, and coarctation of aorta. First, the simplest form of the cardiac heart disease is the atrial septal defect. Most of these children are asymptomatic. They might have some recurrent LRTI, failure to thrive, exercise intolerance, heart failure, and pulmonary hypertension. Spontaneous closure is rare if the defect is more than 8 mm at the time of birth. And if they persist more than 2 years, very rarely it is getting closed by itself. And another thing is that the ASD is very rarely enlarged on follow-up. Now the indications of closure, ASD associated with right ventricular overload is the indication for the closure of the defect. Now ideal age of closure is in asymptomatic child, we close these ASDs at 2 to 4 years of age. Now symptomatic ASDs are having congenital heart failure, severe pulmonary artery hypertension. It occurs in only about 8 to 10% of the cases. If the patient is having ASD and heart failure, we try to rule out the associated reasons because ASD itself doesn't cause congestive heart failure. So always, if there is heart failure with ASD, we rule out the associated lesions like TAPVC, left ventricular outflow obstruction, outer pulmonary window, etc. And if there is heart failure, we always close as early as possible. Now, if the presentation is beyond the ideal age, elective surgery is done irrespective of the age, as long as there is right heart volume overload and pulmonary vascular resistance is in the operable range. Now, as you know, we always close with the two methods are available. The established method is the surgical method, and then nowadays also we are doing with the device closure. So this is most recent mode, may be used in children weighing more than 10 kgs or having a central ASD. So for device closure, these ASDs should have a good margins. So when a patient comes to us, we evaluate first the ASD closure because of the less complications, and more importantly, to avoid the surgical scar. So ASD closure, if not possible by device, then only we go for a surgical closure. Now, in case of sinus venosus ASDs, the timing is usually 4 years of age, because SVC size should be bigger at that time and SVC grafting is easier. Now let's come to the ventricular septal defect. Most of the children, they present with congestive heart failure, frequent low respiratory infection, failure to thrive, and pulmonary arterial hypertension. So if you will not treat in the right time, this is going to happen. This syndrome will go to happen and the lungs will be permanently damaged. Now let's consider the size of the defects. We divide these VSDs into three groups, like large VSDs, moderate, and small VSDs. Large VSDs are equal to the aortic orifice and associated right ventricular systolic. The right ventricular pressure is like systemic pressure. The moderate VSDs, otherwise we call it restrictive VSD. The diameter of the defect is less than that of aortic orifice. Right ventricular pressure is half to 2/3 of the systemic, and the left to right shunt is more than 2:1. Small VSDs again is restrictive. Moderate and small VSDs are called, otherwise called the restrictive VSDs. The diameter is less than 1/3 of the size of the aortic orifice, and right ventricular pressure is normal in this condition, and the shunt is always less than 2:1. So now, if you consider the natural history, about 10% of the large non-restrictive VSDs die in the first year of life, primarily due to congestive heart failure. Spontaneous closure is common in large VSDs. 30 to 40% of the moderate or small VSDs, otherwise called the restrictive VSDs, close spontaneously, majorly by 3 to 5 years of age. Now, increase in size of the VSDs occur in 25% of the cases. Now, the timing of the surgery for the ventricular septal defects. Large VSDs, obviously, with congestive heart failure, should be operated as soon as possible. Large VSDs with severe pulmonary hypertension, heart failure, we try to operate them between 3 to 6 months. Moderate VSDs with pulmonary artery systolic pressure, around 50-60% of systemic pressure, we operate between 1 to 2 years of age. If they become symptomatic in between, we go to surgery. Now there are two modes of treatment. One is surgical closure, then the device closure, particularly for the muscular VSDs with body weight more than 15 kgs. But nowadays, as Dr. Nageswara showed you, we close it even earlier, small infants, small kids also. With the development of the Konar MF device, we are able to close even in the smaller children. But the recommendation is like this: more than 15 cases, muscular VSDs, we should go for a VSD device closure. Then for small perimenous VSDs, when the margins are clear, little away from the aortic valve, we also are going for the closure of the VSDs with a device. Then if these two procedures are not possible, particularly in case of multiple or switched VSDs, very large VSD, almost like a single VSDs in single ventricle, infants with low birth weight, less than 2 kg, or associated comorbid conditions which prevents going for a surgery or a device, we go for a pulmonary artery banding in those conditions. Now let's go to the another common disease, or in fact the commonest form of the disease which you people encounter in your everyday life. That is a patent ductus arteriosus. These patients with a large fat PDA may present with congestive heart failure, low respiratory infection, failure to drive, and pulmonary arterial hypertension, same like a VSD presentation. So again, we are considering the size of the VSD, large, moderate, small, or silent PDAs. So large PDAs, they are significant, they are having significant volume overload, congestive heart failure, and they have severe pulmonary arterial hypertension. Moderate PDAs have got some degree of left heart volume overload, mild to moderate pulmonary arterial hypertension, or usually no or mild congestive heart failure. Small PDAs, they will have minimal or no left heart overload, no pulmonary hypertension or congestive heart failure. Silent PDAs are having no murmurs, no pulmonary hypertension. They only diagnosed when we do a routine echo in all these patients. Now, spontaneous closure of the PDAs. Small PDAs in full-term baby may close up to 3 months of age. Large PDAs are very unlikely to close by itself. Now, regarding the timing of the PDA treatment, the large and moderate PDA with congestive heart failure, pulmonary arterial hypertension, again like VSD, we close between 3 to 6 months of age. Moderate PDA, no congestive heart failure, 6 months to 1 year of age. Small PDAs, again around 1 to 1.5 years of age, we close. Silent PDAs do not require any closure. Now, in case of preterm baby, we intervene when there is heart failure, indomethacin or ibuprofen is failed or contraindicated. So, as I told, PDA can be closed either with a device, coil, or a surgical ligation, particularly if the child is more than 6 months of age. If less than 6 months of age, body weight is not very suitable, we close it surgically. And in case of torn babies, there is no need to use indomethacin or ibuprofen. This is a picture of a preterm baby where the PDA is clipped. This is a clip we go from the side, thoracotomy, and put a clip. Coarctation of the aorta. The timing of surgery is like if the patient is having left ventricular dysfunction, congestive heart failure, or severe upper limb hypertension, immediate intervention is required. Normal left ventricular function, no congestive heart failure, or mild upper limb hypertension, intervention is done beyond 3 to 6 months of age. If there is no hypertension, no heart failure, normal ventricular function, we do intervention at the age of 1 to 2 years of age. Now, intervention is not indicated if the Doppler gradient across the coarctation is less than 20 millimeters of mercury with normal left ventricular function. This will leave it alone. Then, so we have again two modes of treatment for the coarctation of aorta: balloon dilatation and the surgery. So we do the balloon dilation or the surgery if the child is more than 6 months of age. Surgical repair if less than 6 months of age. Nowadays, we are doing also balloon dilatation along with the stent deployment, which can be considered more than 5 years of age or 10 years. The recommendation is 10 years of age, but we are doing more than 5 years of age. We are doing it because nowadays expandable stents are available. We put a stent and subsequently you can keep on dilating later as the child grows. This is a coarctation surgery which you do. We cut the coarctation segment completely. Then we do a end-to-end anastomosis. Now let's come to the cyanotic heart disease during infancy and childhood. The commonest one is tetralogy of Fallot. So for the tetralogy of Fallot, which you may be seen during your practice. So what we'll do in those cases, try to manage it medically, keeping the hemoglobin more than 14 and by oral iron or blood transfusion. Beta blockers to be given in its highest tolerable dose, usually 1 to 4 milligram per kg per day in 2 to 3 divided doses. Now, regarding the timing of tetralogy surgery, all patients in tetralogy, remember, they require surgery. If they are stable, minimally cyanosed, total correction we do at 1 to 2 years of age or earlier according to the institutional policy. In our hospital, what we do, if the patient is having saturations more than around 80 kg, minimally more than 80%, if the saturations minimally cyanosed, we operate more after 6 months of age. If there is significant cyanosis, saturations less than 70%, or history of spells, despite therapy, we still go ahead with a complete correction if the branch PS are normal. Otherwise, if less than 3 months, a BT shunt is put, then more than 3 months, what we do in case of severely cyanotic children, more than 3 months of age, if the child is having, then we put a shunt or correction depending on the anatomy and the surgical center's experience. So I'll repeat this slide again. So if the child is minimally symptomatic, that is cyanosed, then we wait for 6 months. After 6 months, we correct it completely. We do not prefer to put a BT shunt. Then if the child is less than 6 months and is very symptomatic, then what we do, if the child weight and anatomy permits, we go for complete correction. Very rarely we do a BT shunt in case of tetralogy of Fallot. Now, tetralogy of Fallot repair based on purely on institution experience. In India, no spells 1 year of age. Spells that I told you, our policy is 6 months, not 1 year, though it's recommended above 1 year you do surgery. Less than 1 year, you can go for a BT shunt or surgery depending on your experience. So what we are doing, if the child is very small, if the pulmonary artery anatomy is not good, that is branch PAs are small or hypoplastic, we put a BT shunt. Otherwise, in all the cases, if the branch pulmonary arteries, right, left pulmonary artery or right pulmonary artery are normal size, then always we go for complete correction irrespective of the age. Now let's come to the transposition of the great arteries. So, you know, all these arterial switch operations we do between 1st to 4th week of life before LV regresses. Otherwise, if they present late, then we go for a atrial switch operation or Senning operation. This Senning operation is done. We wait for 6 months, then after 6 months we go for a Senning procedure. Now, if the patient present to us between 3 to 4 weeks of age, then we assess the left ventricular function and the mass by echocardiography. If the left ventricle is regressed clear in the echocardiography, then we wait for another 3 to 6 months to do a Senning operation. And sometimes what we do, we sometimes try to rapid 2-stage atrial switch operation, or we are nowadays, if the duct is still a little bit patent, we are putting a stent, wait for a few days for the LV to be prepared and go for a switch operation. If the left ventricle is still prepared, you know, by echocardiography, then we go for a 2-stage atrial switch procedure. So to repeat this slide again, so if the presentation, any atrial switch patient, any DTGA patients comes to us, if the presentation is less than 4 weeks, we almost straightway go for the atrial switch operation. If between 4 weeks onwards, we assess the LV function and the LV mass. If LV is clearly regressed, then definitely we'll wait for the Senning procedure. If the LV is borderline, we try to prepare it by 2 methods: 2-stage atrial switch or a stent, and then followed by atrial switch operation. If there is a ventricular defect associated with this TGA, then we operate these babies between 2 to 3 months of age. Now, this is the atrial switch operation which we do in our institute. That's the right ventricle from where this aorta is arising. Pulmonary artery is posterior. You can see the coronary, one coronary, left coronary here. Right coronary is arising from this area. There's the aorta. We are transecting the aorta, dividing completely. Then we have to take out, look at the coronary arteries, take out the coronary. You can see the coronary ostium there. That's the coronary ostium. So we have to take out the button. This patient was having a single coronary artery. That's the reason we have recorded there. So we are making it to single sinus origin of the coronary artery. So this is one side coronary. We have separated it out now. Then you divide the pulmonary artery. We are dividing. That's the pulmonary artery. We are dividing from the takeoff of the two branch PAs. Now that's the Lecomte maneuver. We have to take the aortic distal end posterior to the branch PAs. We call it Lecomte maneuver. We are pulling it behind that. So now the pulmonary arteries will be in front of the aorta. Now we are joining these two together. The proximal, that was the original pulmonary artery which was cut, and distal aorta is joined together. So the pulmonary valve will become the aortic valve now. Now finally we are reimplanting the coronary arteries into the root. That's the left. And then finally, now see that heart is beating. So we release the clot clamp, heart started beating. And this is the original aortic valve is joined to the distal pulmonary artery. So now the pulmonary artery is in front, aorta is behind. Now going to the single ventricle. So you know that there is either the LV or the RV, only side, one side is functional. It's tricuspid atresia, HLHS. So the timing of the surgery, we have to wait for the, we have to, in any single ventricle pathway, we have to divert the pulmonary blood flow, bypass the heart. Directly we'll connect the pulmonary venous blood to the pulmonary arteries. So the first surgery we do at the age of 6 months to 1 year of age, that is bidirectional Glenn shunt. In this, what we do, we divide the SBC and join the distal end of the SBC to the pulmonary artery, right pulmonary artery. And this one is getting closed. So that is bidirectional Glenn shunt. We do it after 6 months of age. Then the total correction or total bypass, we do total cardiopulmonary connection or Fontan surgery. We do above 3 years of age or above 12 kgs. So in this, there are various ways of doing it. One is intracardiac conduit, one is extracardiac diversion of the IVC blood. So we prefer to do it like this. We connect this IVC, we detach the IVC from the right atrium and put a tube from the IVC to the lower part of the right pulmonary artery. So that is done above 3 years of age. Now regarding the TAPVC, total anomalous pulmonary venous connection. So what do we do? This is, if there is obstructed TAPVC, we do it in the emergency basis as soon as possible, particularly the intracardiac TAPVC. If they are non-obstructive, all intracardiac TAPVCs are obstructed, and we operate as soon as child come to us. Even immediately after birth, we always go for surgery. If they are non-obstructive, particularly like the supracardiac or the cardiac types, we can wait for some time, and after the neonatal period, we go for complete correction. So this is in nutshell about the cyanotic heart disease with increased pulmonary blood flow. So TAPVR, TGA, and truncus arteriosus. So these are the cyanotic heart disease with increased pulmonary blood flow. So TAPVR, RV dominance, early routing of the pulmonary veins more than 6 weeks of age. Then TGA, DORV with VSD at the ventricular level mixing. So we do a PA banding or biventricular correction above 6 weeks of age. This is for single ventricle I'm talking about. Then BDG 6 to 12 months of age, and TAPVC, as I told, more than 3 years of age. Truncus arteriosus I have not discussed in details here because of lack of time. So what we do surgery above 6 weeks onwards. So we wait for 2 to 3 months usually. In between that, we go for a Rastelli operation. Rastelli operation is nothing but we close the VSD and put a tube, put a conduit from the RV to pulmonary artery. So thanks for your attention. Sorry for the inconvenience at the starting. Thank you all.
And any questions, anything is there, feedback, the mail ID is there, or you can share to Mr. Suresh. The mail ID has been shared to you all. Thank you all for patience hearing. Thank you so much.